Growing up in San Antonio, I was always fascinated by the local urban legends and ghost stories, even going as far as visiting a few of the haunted sites where some of the rumored specters live. If you ever lived in South Texas, you know about many of them yourself. Here, I will post any experience and any account of my friends and acquaintances that have experienced any of these legends. I started elementary school in 1980 at Westward Terrace in San Antonio, Texas. All throughout my school days, I heard many local legends. Now, the way I heard it, back in the 50s, a young woman had been in a fire. My wife says she heard the donkey lady had lost 2 children in that fire, and her husband is actually the one who started the fire. She was left horribly disfigured. It was said that when her face healed, all the skin had something of a droopy, baggy appearance. Her fingers had all fused together, leaving dark stumps or hooves. Disfigured and totally insane, she stayed mostly in the areas of Bexar County and brought terror among anyone who approached her. As children, when we could stay out late on summer nights, we would all describe what we thought she looked like. We were absolutely positive she waited in the darkness for us to separate so she could pounce on a lone victim, ripping and chewing. You get the idea. Most of the donkey lady stories have faded into memory, but one was a little harder to shake. One of my best friends told me about a cousin who was with his father and brother on a weekend outing. They were going to camp and do a little fishing in a county park. The group pulled up to a weed-infested area off a dirt road and began to make camp. The 2 boys had the task of unloading the pickup truck, while the father found a suitable spot for the tent. While they were unloading the truck, one of the boys heard a rustling in the weeds just ahead of the truck. He told his brother, who in turn called out to their father to come back to the truck. The 3 of them watched the tall weeds beneath the oaks away from the road bend under the weight of what was apparently a large animal. Then they heard a strange, snorting sound and a high-pitched snarl. The father, not recognizing the sounds coming from this animal, decided they should find another spot to set up camp. The 3 of them quickly threw the tent, sleeping bags, and gear into the back of their truck. While packing up, the father watched out of the corner of his eye as the weeds shook nearby. Whatever or whoever this was moved away from the trees and began heading for the general area of the road. The father urgently whispered for the boys to get in the truck fast. All 3 of them were in the truck in a flash, and the father started the truck up. He put the truck into gear and was just pulling out in the road when something fast and large burst out of the weeds and ran at the front of the truck. Seconds later, something bounded up onto their hood and began shrieking at them through the glass. It was the ugliest thing any of them ever saw. They swore it looked like a donkey, but it was mostly human. It then screamed at them more as the truck continued to move away from the weeds and into the road. It used its deformed hands to punch at the windshield and broke it in many places. The father hit the brakes. This thing slid off the hood and onto the dirt road. Throwing the truck into reverse, the father floored the gas pedal and put some distance between them and the thing, backing into the weeds off the road. He then put the truck into first and stepped on it again. Whatever this thing was, it was coming up on them fast. They said it almost looked like a wild animal with an incredible look of rage and hatred in its eyes. The truck sprayed dirt off from the road at the beast as they pulled out, slowing it down just enough for them to get away. The donkey lady had finally dropped back and headed into the weeds. After the story was told, my friend let it be known that he thought it was a nice story. But then he was taken outside and shown the truck. The windshield was almost knocked out, the hood was dented, and its paint was scuffed and scrape. So if you ever visit San Antonio, aside from going to the Riverwalk and many attractions around, and the creepy haunted places, stay away from camping sites. You might just encounter the donkey lady. When a new steel bridge opened in 2001, the old Alton Bridge was retired, but the original truss bridge from 1884 remains just off Teasley Lane in the far southwest part of Denton, Texas. People say that when a local goat farmer by the name of Oscar Washburn was murdered on the bridge, he called upon the devil to save him. Transformed into a demonic satyr, he now guards the bridge, stalking those who cross at night without their headlights on. It was a dark, clear night within a 45-minute drive from Big Sandy, Texas. A roommate, her boyfriend, and I went to find a place to have a couple of drinks and hang out. We drove for a while and were headed back to Big Sandy when the boyfriend said he had to take a leak. So of course, we told him to pull off to the side of the road. Not much later, he saw a sign for a cemetery, but I can't remember the name, or else I would tell you all. It was a very wooded area and the cemetery was gated. However, the gates were open. The cemetery was up an incline and couldn't be seen from the road. My roommate and I were completely creeped out and kept telling him to turn back. He made the excuse of it was too tight to turn back and he promised us it would be okay. So we kept going. About 3 to 5 minutes later, up the dirt road was a clearing with a few trees. In the moonlight and car lights, we could see a small mausoleum, gravestones, and more gravestones ahead of us in a very dark road. My roommate's boyfriend then jumped out to go take a leak behind a large man-sized headstone, and we were left in the car. I don't know why, but I decided to get out of the car for a second, but it was so quiet. And all these woods in East Texas are never quiet. I got a little bit creeped out of the whole situation, so I jumped back in. As we were both sitting in the car, waiting for her boyfriend to come back, my roommate then tells me, "Hey, do you see that in front of us?" Mind you, it's pretty dark, but I tell her where, and she points ahead of us, about 50 yards away. As I focus deep into the darkness, I see something. A dark shadow, pitch black, more darker than the surrounding area. But what stood out was, it looked like a shadow of a human, but it was weird. It was about 2 to 3 feet tall. We then saw it move. We screamed out the window for our friend to hurry. In the 5 seconds that it took us to scream, this thing, or creature, started running towards us. As it was getting closer, we were screaming more, and my roommate's boyfriend jumped back in the car. And before he peeled back out, we were going in reverse, and this thing was just standing there. We all saw it, and then it walked away. It disappeared back into the woods to our right. We never saw it on the way back out the cemetery again. Nobody said a single word on the way back. My friends refused to talk about it after, and no one believed me, but I know what I saw, and they know what they saw. However, I do wish I could remember the name of the cemetery so that you all could go as well. Chased out of New Orleans in the 1800s, a queen who practiced voodoo, resettled in the town of Marshall, Texas. She lived there peacefully, practicing voodoo, until the town's priest, fearful of the occult, killed her on the side, a stagecoach road. Today, people say that they see somebody walking along the road at night when it's a full moon, carrying shrunken heads and voodoo dolls. People that have seen her on the side of the road claim to be some sort of witch, determined to bring bad luck to anybody that stops by her to help, especially any relative that was involved with the town or with this priest that betrayed her. This is 100% real. I'm from Abilene, Texas, just under 200 miles west of Dallas. I'm 25, and my older cousin I'm going to mention is 30. We have family in San Antonio that we visit every year in the summer. And when I say, I mean my grandmother and her daughters, my mom being one of them, and the rest of her sisters, and all their kids, my dad and my sister, my wife and kid, etc. We have a pretty big family, so we make a vacation out of it. We enjoy the water parks and have barbecue and things of that sort. So basically, to not make this too long, some of us took off to San Antonio around lunchtime, one Friday, the weekend of our vacation. Now typically, it's about a 3.5 hour drive if I'm in no rush, and even 4-hour trip. Some of the family left around noon and made it by 4. But me and my cousin, his name is, well, we'll call him Steven. Me and Steven couldn't leave till we got off work Friday around 5:30 to 6. So we left around the same time, which was 7:30. We didn't plan that. He has his own family and I have mine. We also both had one kid at the time and are both still married. So we hit the road, and 1/3 of the way there in Brady, Texas, we noticed each other at the gas station. What are the odds, right? So we were laughing, and he took off as I went inside and told him I wanted 20 on number 3. I always like to have more than enough fuel on road trips. So after I filled up and checked the baby and wife and make sure that everything is good, we get back on the road. The sun has faded away and it's almost pitch black now. If anyone has driven 283 south, it turns into US 87 just after Mason, Texas, all the way to Fredericksburg, Texas. And basically, the only light for that 1.5-hour strip is your headlight, and that's where it happened. So we're cruising, and there's deer signs every 10 miles or so, because there's so many of them on that strip. So with my aftermarket headlights on my 2013 GMC Sierra, it's very well lit, so I feel comfortable knowing that I'm driving safe in case I see something run out from the side of the road. And just after Mason is when I saw it. So I'm driving south and this thing is walking north in the direction towards me on the same side of the road as well. So it was on the passenger side of the truck as we passed. It was walking all the way to the side of the road, but not quite on the grass either. My wife was on her phone as I said, "Did you see that?" She said, "See what?" Now keep this in mind. I just previously mentioned it's pitch black. I haven't seen a car on the side of the road, much less a house or ranch, for the last 10 minutes or so. So I can't really describe. What I saw was a human body with a sheet over it. It seemed to be human legs and feet, but I couldn't really tell because I was going 77 and it happened so fast. But it looked like human skin and flesh from the shins down, including toes. And I watched it as it took 3 or 4 strides. It didn't seem very large in size, maybe 5'9" or 6 feet at best. Not bony, not obese. Also, I didn't see arms, it was literally a whole white sheet looking fabric over its whole body. I mentioned the height because of the skinwalker talk, but what freaked me out the most is how or why would some sick bastard pull a prank like this? If they did, where did they live? I'm talking about some Jeepers Creepers bus scene back road driving, that kind of empty. Another thing to mention is that the sheet didn't have holes cut out for the eyes, so how did it see in pitch black? And whatever this thing is, how did it know not to walk in the middle of the street? I had so many questions, but I didn't want to freak the wife out, so I just floored it. I started going around 105 and had to calm myself down because I kept looking in the rear view mirror looking for headlights on some Jeepers Creepers shit again. I don't know why I keep referencing that movie because I haven't seen it in like 5 years. But still, here's the best part. I got over it when we got to the family's house and showered and got all settled in. And that's when I went outside to go chill with the family and catch up. And that's when I overheard Steven telling them what happened on the drive over between Mason and Fredericksburg. And that's when every hair on my neck and arms stood up. And it just did again as I'm typing this. The picture is so vivid and the feeling is so real. I looked at Steven and I asked to describe what he saw, and he described exactly what I saw as well. We were so surprised. Again, could it have been some weirdo playing a game? A ghost? How cliche with the whole white sheet thing, right? Or a real serial killer waiting for someone to turn around? I don't know, but for damn sure, I wasn't gonna be the one to ask him if he needed help. So from this day on, I refused to ever drive to or from San Antonio, Texas after dark. Have y'all ever seen anything like this in South Texas? Comment and let me know. Thank you for reading my true story. Have a great night. The train tracks at the intersection of Shane and Villa Main in South San Antonio are well known to locals for a gruesome legend. The story goes that a school bus full of children stopped on the train tracks. When the train rounded the bend and could not stop in time, all of the children were killed. People say that if you park your car on the tracks and put it in neutral, the ghostly children will push your vehicle to safety. Some even claim to have found children's handprints in the dust on their bumpers.